their face for something?
Yep.
Okay.
Kozilek's Return is fine. You're playing against a young Pyromancer deck.
Yeah.
That one seems pretty good here.
Kills everything but Gurmag Angler and True Name Nemesis. That could be good. I don't know if it's better than killing your opponent.
Yeah, I'd prefer to kill my opponent.
All right. So they're going to get ready for a second game. They, of course, as the mono-red sneak attack player, unsurprisingly, are the first match to have finished game 1. Now, StarCityGames.com, we have the StarCityGames.com game night. This is exclusive pins and tokens given away as prizes just at your local tournaments all around the country. So what this means is you enter your events, and at stores participating in game night, these will be showing up near you. So for May, these prizes will be the Imperious Perfect. It is the cat that is also an Elf Warrior token. Goes great in Elf Tribal decks, I hear. Also in cat decks, I suppose? Your green cat decks?
Yeah, mostly the Elf Tribal decks. This was pretty good in some of my Eternal Masters drafts.
Yeah, I do like that card. Next month, we'll be switching over to the Murderous Red Carp. It's clearly a Goblin Rogue. You can tell that one. So that's me giving away. And now if a store registers in time, we can get you signed up in time for the July promotion, which is the Goose of Saint Traft. Sign-ups all May for that one. So lots to look forward to here from Game Night. Coming, you can find a location or register, starcgames.com/game night.
Yeah, some really awesome tokens. I actually saw a Geist of St. Traft in play today. Not during the coverage.
Wow.
During the Modern Classic. Harlan Fear was playing them in the sideboard of his Jeskai control deck.
Over on the Modern game, we also have a result. Connor Bowman, who takes game 1 over Clay Spicklemire. So with Dredge, he manages to get a game off of Clay Spicklemire's 4-color Death Shadow deck. So 2 wins on the side of the number 6 team here, of Walton, Bowman, and Reginbald.
Yeah, the Dredge deck is likely favored by some amount in game 1 of that matchup. Spicklemire is really going to be looking to hedge the Nile Spellbombs in his sideboard to pull off the sideboard games.
This is our last call for playmat redemption. If you still have your playmat voucher, you need to come redeem that now.
For Casey Walton on Mono Red Sneak Attack, he looks like he's going to be taking a mulligan here. Down to 6. I do like the red sleeves.
It's a nice touch.
Yeah. With monocolored decks, it's usually, you know, especially something like this where the deck's really loud in its own right already.
He's got sunglasses too. Can't look at that deck too long because it's so hot.
Oh, God. All right, the 6 is a keep. He's going to scry. Looks at opponent and says, do you think I should scry this? Guy's like, yeah, you're playing sneak attack.
Just cast Blood Moon.
Turn on Gitaxian Probe. Let's see the beauty that Casey Walton has kept. Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, 2 Simian Spirit Guides, Chalice of Void, and Through the Breach. So he could make 5 mana on turn. He could make 5 mana on turn 1 and cast Through the Breach. Love it.
Yep.
Yep.
I hope that the card he was looking at was Gristlebrand.
Oh,
Do you think, should I
keep this Gristlebrand?
Should I keep this? Hold on, let me put on my sunglasses. I don't want to look at this too long without eye protection.
There is Force of Will plus blue card in Garnier's hand, which is going to mean all this fast mana might run into a counter spell.
Yeah.
When it does, it could be a 5 for 1.
That is a big number on the other side of a small number. Not a good exchange.
Delver of Secrets and a go for Spencer Garnier. Looks like it was Magus of the Moon.
That
was the
was
card he
pretty
scried to the
good.
top. I do like that. See if he'll go for that on turn 1.
Probably not going to Through the Breach it in. I imagine that he would just cast it.
Yeah, I want to keep that one in play. Lotus Petal, Ancient Tomb. Taps for 2. Now we're going to get to see, is it Chalice or Magus? Chalice of the Void on 1. That's the bait spell.
He can actually
It's true.
He can still cast Magus on this
Oh,
turn.
gross. He actually can, can't he? Force of Will pitching a blue card for Spencer.
Gets rid of Daze as Lotus Petal plays around that one.
And that was the trap, friend. Now we make the other card. Now, granted, after playing Maximum, Casey Walton will be down to just 1 land in play. He might lose the race to Insectile Aberration if he does this.
Yeah, he would really be hoping for the Delver not to flip. His hand doesn't really do anything else.
He'd just have a 2/2. He'd burn everything for a 2/2? Yeah, he's just going to pass. Delver of Secrets flips off, looks like Daze.
Yeah, so he probably would have lost that race.
Yep. He's getting wastelanded now, though. That's not going to help. Delver swings. Insectile Aberration swings over for 3. and Deathrite Shaman. See, none of this would have happened if there was Magus of the Moon in play. With Daze, yeah, Casey, I don't know if he's going to get up to enough mana to do anything anymore.
Yeah, he's a 2-mana land away from having his Through the Breach dazed.
Yeah, so he needs 3 more mana. Looks like he picked up Sneak Attack. He'll just pass.
Yeah, still nothing to put in off of that one.
And Spencer draws another Force of Will here. That should be good enough to get him the game.
And Spencer has exactly what he needs. He has pressure, he has disruption. Was able to counter the first big spell and pretty much kept Casey off casting anything else so far. Has it covered even if he casts something. Not to mention that Casey has 2 ways to cheat giant monsters into play with no giant monster yet materialized.
Just Lotus Petal in play for Casey Walton.
Looks like Basic Mountain has joined the holdings.
Got a land and a pass. Deathrite Shaman will keep the pressure going. It gets Casey down to 10. This is actually a 2-turn clock. Shaman dealing 2 damage per turn, and the Insectile Liberation doing the same thing. Would need to be 1 more instant in a graveyard, I suppose, but Spencer should be able to do that.
You'll need to get instant in the graveyard, and if it costs mana to go there, you get then another mana source.
Casey down to 7, draws a card.
But Spencer does have Force of Will and Daze in hand, so if Casey does anything, that will result in it being countered and Spencer killing him.
Right.
Yeah.
If Casey casts a spell here, he will lose.
And if he doesn't cast a spell, he'll lose in
probably.
another one
Probably
more turn.
If I'm learning anything from this, it's saying, man, you just need to dump all your cards every turn. The best shot was that turn 2 when he had the Force of Will. Dump everything else for Magus of the Moon, cross fingers.
This is Mono Red Sneak Attack. You draw 7 cards, cast as many spells as you can, as fast as you can.
And then you see if you won. Down to 5 for Walton. Insectile Liberation puts him down to 2.
No attack with Deathrite Shaman, no need.
No, if Casey Walton tries to cast any sort of spell, he'll just immediately die to the Deathrite Shaman, so...
Yep, that's also true.
Seems great. Yeah, I'll cast a Brainstorm.
Well.
Yeah, that should do it.
Yeah, found the land. This is now lethal.
Guess we should resolve the Brainstorm while we're at it, but...
Yeah, gotta resolve it for it to enter the graveyard.
And then 2 more damage. So, going to be a deciding game between Garnier and Casey Walton. 1 game apiece now over in Legacy.
And we're going back to a game where Walton will be on the play. That is where this deck is very scary. It's one of the scariest decks in Legacy, actually, to be on the play. Makes it so you can't daze anything. Kind of have to have Force of Will in your opener because turn 1 Chalice, turn 1 Blood Moon, these things happen a lot.
Yeah, so looking back through there, I mean, for Casey Walton's side, so yes, the Magus the Moons have come in. You can see that and possibly nothing else. But Magus the Moon, I guess, great against the Delver decks. They don't play... I don't believe there's other basics on Garnier's side.
Nah, who needs that?
I don't know, Blood Moon's turn 1 Blood Moon.
Just control Deathrite Shaman.
Can't play Deathrite Shaman on turn 0.
That's a good point.
And that's why Mono Red's great. I'm going to go toward a deciding game. You see with the speeder, the blue-red control matchup still in game 1 over on the standard side of things. I mean, that makes sense. They're only 15 minutes in.
Yeah.
It's enough time to play a whole Legacy match, though.
Indeed. Just more games. Everybody likes more games. That's what I always enjoyed about Legacy. One, the depth of the gameplay is very interesting, and the other thing is a lot of the matches went real quick.
All right, well, they're going to get ready for a third deciding game. We have over in Modern, Connor Bowman up a game on Clay Spicklemire, but now we're in the sideboards. Dredge losing some value after sideboard. And then, who knows, for Chris Andersen and Brendan Reginbald, if it comes down to, if these first 2 matches split, we're going to end up seeing a lot of that one.
Yeah, it's possible they'll have finished a game before the other 2 matches finish.
All right. All right, 7-card hands being drawn here for the deciding game between Walton and Garnier. The important thing here, I think, is to look at Walton's face. That's the biggest read here of what's going on.
He's a pretty stoic guy, but
He
when
nodded.
he has a question, he asks his teammate.
His teammate.
That's his tell.
From what I've gathered, when he asks Connor Bowman about a hand, Connor says, "Yeah, keep that."
Yeah. Let me play my game. Just leave me alone.
Dude, you're playing this run. You're playing sneak attack. Yes, keep it.
Cast the chalice.
Cast the things and see if it wins. All right, we're underway. City of Traders, Lotus Petal, 2 mana, Chalice the Void on 1. All right, that's gonna get the Force of Will, right?
Not forcing would not be great.
Yeah, I mean we saw he doesn't get to play Magic, so 1 Force of Will check. Can Casey present a second?
His hand is a
Force of Will?
lot of lands.
Is it all lands?
Pitching that Brainstorm was a pretty significant cost. I assume it was his only blue card.
Yeah.
Or he has a second Brainstorm. Obviously, you can't cast Brainstorm if Chalice
Yeah,
is
you
on
can't
the
like let
battlefield.
Chalice resolve and then Brainstorm, so you're gonna pitch it.
But yeah, that Brainstorm.
With as many lands, the read here is that's got to be his only blue card. Yeah, he has Deathrite Shaman and more lands, so
Yeah, I think 4 lands in hand.
would have been nice to not have to force on turn 1. Now, can Casey make a second threat? There's a Through the Breach he just drew for the turn. Remember, without playing Brainstorm its own, Mono Red Sneak Attack can. It's not the best at reloading.
Yeah, its strength just comes from redundancy, peeling cards off the top.
Lotus Petal on turn 1. Was there... Spencer can't daze, I suppose. So 3 mana, loses the City of Traders. Here's Blood Moon. It's going to work.
Yep, that's daze proof.
Okay. Now, Deathrite Shaman did get into play before the Blood Moon hit, so... So Spencer can use the Shaman. There's only 2 lands. He can cast that Brainstorm he drew, but he can't complete the Brainstorm with a Shuffle because there weren't any fetch lands anymore. So it's kind of a worse Brainstorm here.
And Casey's City of Traders did enter the graveyard. He respected daze by sequencing that way. It makes it so Spencer gets 1 more activation of the Deathrite Shaman off of exiling lands, but I think it's going to take more spells than that to win this game.
Yeah, Daze in Spencer's hand. Now, Daze actually isn't castable here for Spencer.
No, you cannot return a mountain to your hand to pay the cost of daze.
Yes, Blood Moon's not, their lands are mountains in addition to their other types. They are mountains. Good old tapping for a red. Now, these are non-basic mountains. It's very, very fancy, but you cannot bounce it to Daze.
Ideal draw here would be a Young Pyromancer, which you can just cast with 2 mountains.
Yeah, you're right. That's fine. Can he take Blood Moon off the battlefield?
I'm not seeing a way to make that so. Post-sideboard, there is an Engineered Explosives, but he can't get 3 colors of mana, even if that is in. There's no Abrupt Decays available, and there would be no way to get green-black anyway.
Well, there could be some line, right, where Deathrite Shaman casts another Deathrite Shaman, and then together they make 3 mana. I don't know where all these lands are getting into the graveyard from.
You would have to discard some of these lands to a full hand size for a while.
Chalice of the Void for 1 from Casey Walton. That's going to resolve 2. The lock pieces are building up. Casey's out of lands, though. Result in the control mirror, it is Chris Andersen winning game 1 over Brendan Reginbald.
That match is going to be important because this does not look good for Spencer.
Well, if Walton is the winner, yeah, they're going to need Chris Andersen's win. Now, Spicklemire also down a game, so the match might finish with or without Chris Andersen's match. And Spencer fires up the 20-turn clock. Deathrite Shaman gets in there. And it can work. The mono red sneak attack can take a long time here to rebuild. And actually, this is a real card drawn by Garnier.
Yeah, he picked up Gurmag Angler. There's still 1 land in the graveyard. That could make a black mana. There's 2 cards in Spencer's deck to delve away.
But Spencer attacked instead of delving there. He could have cast it. Right?
Must be saving that activation for something.
He can't because he needs 1 more land. The Deathrite Shaman exiles a land to make a mana. And then you can't delve. You can't exile it to Deathrite Shaman and delve it away.
It was enough because he has 2 other cards, 4 lands. That's a 5th mana, 6/7.
All right,
here's
Gurmag Angler, yeah. Passes. So this is a real clock. 6 power in play. It's a 3-turn clock for Spencer Garnier.
It must be that it just didn't change the clock on the previous turn.
And that makes sense.
And pickup was Force of Will, and he does have a Daze in hand. That can pitch. He can't cast the Daze, but he can pitch it to Force. That much is true.
Yeah, this is actually looking promising. Walton's down to 12. So he established the lock pieces, but had no way to recover. And Spencer Garnier, I think, is going to take this.
Yeah, we are certainly
Walton down to 6. This is quite the turnaround.
We are seeing a fail rate on the sneak attack deck in a big way here.
Yeah, here's a mountain, but all right, Walton's going to have to make a move.
Likely needs to be multiple Simian Spirit Guides / Lotus Petals in that hand to pull anything out from here.
But there's a Force plus blue card in Garnier's hand.
Yep. He's just dead next turn.
Garnier attacks for lethal. And is that going to do it? And it will. Spencer
Wow.
Garnier, what a comeback here. Grixis Delver in 3 is your winner in Legacy.
Yeah, and that Blood Moon, it was really good. But Spencer, he had the ability to cast 2 spells. One of them was Gurmag Angler, and the Angler was enough to actually close the game. And that just happens sometimes. The prison decks, you have to actually kill your opponent. Give them enough time, they're going to do something about it.
All right, so the team of Garnier, Spicklemire, and Andersen take the game 1 over there in Legacy. We're going to move over to our modern match here. This is where we see Clay Spicklemire having lost the first game in Death Shadow versus Dredge. So right now, this game, if Clay comes back and wins, it's over. If not, we'll go to standard for the 3rd match.
Yep. Yeah, I assume that the Dredge bout should be finished first.
Yeah, they're in the sideboard game. So what we've seen in the past is that while Clay Spicklemire has lost some game 1s, 3 Nile spell bombs in the sideboard have served him really well in this matchup. In addition to actually the stubborn denials in the main have done some good work.
Yeah, you're able to counter Cathartic Reunion potentially. It can protect you from the lethal Conflagrate, which is often how Dredge actually closes the game. A lot of play to that card.
Yeah, so we are going to go ahead and now bring you into the match. This is already in progress. Game number 2. It is going to be Dredge versus 4-color Death Shadow.
And it looks like we're pretty deep into game 2 here. Clay with 4 lands and a Death Shadow. But Connor has assembled a Stinkweed Imp, which is going to make it hard to connect with that Shadow anymore. And Clay's life total is very low. He's down to 6, and Connor has a very wide board. You see 2 Amalgams just entered.
Yeah, you mentioned that one of the things against Death going wide can be tough for Death Shadow. And this looks like Bowman is going to even things up. So once again, go back to that Garnier match in Legacy. Stealing that win is having huge effects.
Yes. Yeah, if Walton was able to win that one, and it looks like Bowman's going to win this one, but yeah, it was not the case.
You see right now, that is Garnier now having moved between his other 2 teammates, talking with Spicklemire. Can he find a way to win? He's got Tarmogoyf in hand. There's 5 attackers on Bowman's side.
Bowman's life total is still pretty high at
Yeah.
12, and remember, Spicklemire is not playing a Battle Rage version.
Right, you look at that and you say, hey, if Clay has a Teamer Battle Rage, he may be just 1 here. 14 power worth of trample, 1 Street Wraith and a Battle Rage would do it. But no, he's gone for the Stubborn Denial build. Which, to be fair, the Stubborn Denials have been very good for him on the weekend. We've seen him make a lot of really win a game on the back of him.
Right. Those cards, they demonstrate their value in very different spots. It just so happens he's in a spot where the Battle Rage would be the better card.
Traverse the Ulfenwald is the play for Clay. He'll find another Death Shadow. He has Delirium.
I believe Tarmogoyf is in his hand as well, so we can assemble a couple creatures here. That covers the ground attacks, so Stinkweed plus Narcomoeba, that represents 2 damage every turn. And it's unclear if Bowman has a Conflagrate or not. This game could be over in very short order. Yeah, but Clay doing what he can, going wide on the ground. It also makes it more tenuous for Bowman to actually attack, with the risk of being killed on the way back.
Plays Liliana the Last Hope, has it kill Bloodghast. And those being his plays, Clay will sit back and hope to survive the turn. Now, Bloodghast, if it comes back off a land, will have haste. Spicklemire is at 6.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like life from the loam from Bowman, so there will be some lands here. Gets 3 in hand. He has Conflagrate in his graveyard as well as Bloodghast. This is a... I don't know the Clay's going to get out of the turn. Well, let's see. He has a 3-point burn spell in hand with Conflagrate. And it looks like his unblocked creatures are 3 damage, so that'll work. Here's Bloodghast. It has haste because Spicklemire at 6. A swing of the team, all of it at Clay. Blocks the 2 biggest ones. Clay takes 4, goes to 2. And Conflagrate in the graveyard should send us to a deciding match. 2 red mana, discards 3. That is going to be lethal. So Bowman defeats Spicklemire 2-0 to even things up, which is going to mean it's now on the backs of Brendan Reginbald and Chris Andersen.
Mm-hmm. And on the standard table, Chris did win the first game. They're in their first sideboarded game here. Yeah, everything's all tied up. That was really a surprising conclusion to the Legacy match. This one goes how it frequently does, so we assume that Dredge is at least slightly favored in this matchup. It's part of the incentive to be playing Dredge in Modern right now.
All right, so 2 matches now completed. So we have our Legacy in the books, our Modern in the books. It means it's going to come down to the mirror match in blue-red control between Brendan Reginbald and Chris Andersen. And from the onset, you kind of knew that this was going to be, if it came to it, this match was going to decide things.
Yeah, this is certainly the one that you would expect to take the longest of any matches. And the spell suite here, these decks are extremely similar.
Right.
A lot of overlap in what players are doing here.
Yeah, their main decks both have 4 Torrential Gearhooks and are just a smattering of spells, a lot of card draw, a lot of negate. Now, what's going to be interesting is their differences out of the sideboard. Chris Andersen has cards like Dragon Master, Outcast, and Dynavolt Tower, 3 of each, along with 2 Dispels and an extra negate. So there's a lot of good tools there. No Tower Zone Reginbald's sideboard. He has a different kind of plan.
Mm-hmm. He just has more creatures. He has Thing of the Ice, where Chris has Dynavolt Tower. Both these cards are very good, very resilient. It's hard to kill Thing in the Ice with red removal, but it's impossible to kill Dynavolt Tower with it.
All right, so this match is already underway. We're bringing you into game number 2. This is Andersen versus Reginbald.
And as we go in here, Chris has found a Dynavolt Tower already.
Not only has he found it, but I think maybe more importantly, he's resolved it.
Mm-hmm.
As both decks are blue-red, once that's in play, it doesn't actually leave.
And it looks like both players are just keeping pace on lands as well. The only discernible advantage from here is that Chris has that tower.
All right, I'll bring you into the match as soon as we can here.
It looks like we're seeing land go. As frequently the early game, by early game I mean the first 12 turns of these matches tends to go.
All right. Dragon Master Outcast is going to be the play for Chris Andersen. We apologize on the smaller picture here right now. We'll bring into the close-up as soon as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Master Outcast gets killed by Harnessed Lightning from Reginbald.
Harness Lightning not the best card post-sideboard, but you need to have access to it because Outcast can just steal the game on its own.
And Chris will draw here. So right now the tower is sitting pretty, just 3 energy in play for Chris, but he tries for another Dragon Master Outcast. And that'll be Harnessed Lightning as well. These Outcasts, I mean, with the amount of removal in both decks, it seems like it's pretty common for them to be killed here.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty common now for these standard decks, these blue control decks, to have Thing in the Ice and or Dragon Master Outcast in their sideboard. The idea is you catch your opponent with less removal or even no removal in the sideboarded games. Even with the Harness Lightning, there's a very small number of them. It just played out that Chris drew the creature and Brendan drew the removal spell. He still has that uncontested Dynavolt Tower.
Glimmer of Genius on end step here by Reginbald. And Chris Andersen has a lot of counter spells here, that a full hand. It looks like he is going to let the Glimmer resolve. Reginbald goes up to 9 energy. Now, unlike Andersen, Reginbald doesn't actually have a way to use this energy. He doesn't, outside of casting very large harness lightnings.
He controls 2 ether hubs, and frequently you end up in a counter war that involves a lot of blue mana in this matchup, but that's not exactly a payoff.
Yeah, there's no right.
He's allowed to have a blue-red land.
Yeah, okay, he's got more duels. Chris will cast Hieroglyphic Illumination on Brendan's end step. So both players are just kind of... Their hand size doesn't seem to be going down here by much. But because of Dynavolt Tower, I feel like this puts pressure on Brendan.
It does. He has resolved that Glimmer, considering whether he wants to fight over the Hieroglyphic Illumination. Once that tower's on the battlefield, Brendan needs to find a spot where he can get a Torrential Gearhawk on the battlefield, maybe stick a thing in the ice and get a way to flip. He needs to find a threat that's going to close the game pretty quickly, because the Dynavolt Tower will just kind of win a game over time. And if Brendan's able to just get ahead on cards in hand, and if he's able to successfully fight and win that battle, that does make it way easier to find that window for Torrential Gearhulk.
It's going to be the third outcast from Andersen. It's the last one in his deck. It'll be met by Essence Scatter. See full hands from both players here, too. Multiple counterspells and Gearhulks. So right now, it's really just going to be some trading of resources and draw spells. Similar lands on both sides. The tower is the only real difference.
We saw in previous turns, Brendan didn't try to fight a counter war over the outcast. He just went right for Harness Lightning. It's fair to assume that if he had another removal spell, that would be his plan. He's going for the Essence Scatter here, which you would generally want to save for a Torrential Gearhulk.
So Chris Andersen will attempt to disallow the Essence Scatter. Now, this is all on Chris's turn, so there's some potential for Brendan to overload mana here. See, taking care of every time a spell is cast, there's extra energy is made from Dynavolt Tower.
And Chris fought with that counter. I would be very surprised if Brendan countered Chris's disallow, that Chris actually continued to fight the counter war, as I believe that Chris has an Essence Scanner in his own hand. And if we just go back to Brendan's turn, he casts Torrential Gearhulk, gets Harness Lightning, kills the outcast.
Yeah, and then
just lost a bunch of material for no reason.
You see Brendan's hand, 2 disallows, a Hieroglyphic Illumination, make that 2 Hieroglyphic Illuminations, and a Gearhulk. So Brendan will go for another disallow. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Chris is not going to fight over it. 2 cards trade for 2 cards. And then we pass to Brendan's turn. Brendan untapping with 7 lands, could make 8. It's not enough to cast a Gearhulk and protect it. So after drawing the card, Brendan will let Chris refresh his mana. Chris, a draw and a pass. Hieroglyphic Illumination from Brendan. We've seen from Andersen's side a reluctance to fight over this card up to this point.
You previously let a Glimmer of Genius just resolve.
Right. And he'll do the same with the Illumination.
It's easier to let these spells resolve when you're able to draw more cards yourself.
Right.
But it's hard to fight the counter war if you're already down on cards.
And negate. And Brendan's hand just continues to improve. You see negate, dispel, disallow. 2 illuminations. He's not casting them so he doesn't have to discard the hand size.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be.
Right. You'll see a good amount of that in this kind of matchup.
And we'll see on Chris's end step a pull from tomorrow for 3. So this is a draw 3, discard 1. And get those 2 energy. So it's a +1. A fancy Hieroglyphic Illumination.
Yeah, this one's close to being worth fighting over. It's a small amount of card advantage, though, and it's on Brendan's end step. That's not really when he wants to be casting spells.
Yeah, it's not that different than fighting over a Glimmer of Genius, which neither player really has done. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do see it resolve. What it does let Chris do, though, especially with the draw and discard part, is he gets to keep making land drops. You see he makes Aether Hub and has another land waiting in his hand. Reginbald, we'll see what he wants to do. He casts Illumination. The pause here was that Brendan already has a 7-card hand. So this will draw him up to 8 and then 9 on his draw step. Even if he has a land drop, he may be forced to discard.
If he's able to produce one of these sideboard creatures, this would be a great spot to make a land drop and cast that. Yeah. Discarding for turn, not the end of the world, as long as you have a hand that's full of, counter spells, draw spells to gas back up. You know, he already has Torrential Gearhulk somewhere in there. Plenty of counter magic available.
Right, so you see that 8-card hand here for Brendan. A lot of negates and dispels. And I am wondering if he's this close to having to discard to hand size, maybe when Pull from Tomorrow happened, there's an argument for Brendan just throwing a negate at it. And yeah, Chris will counter back, but I didn't want, it's a negate that you throw away maybe better than negate you discard to hand size.
If you find yourself in a spot where you have to discard to hand size and there's not just like a clear worst card in your hand,
right,
it makes sense to throw an okay spell.
As long as it trades with a similar, like if a negate trades out of a negate from Chris's deck, sure.
Yeah.
Though if neither player is fighting over a draw spell, my guess is that Chris would let the negate happen. Chris is saying when you're not fighting over an illumination with a negate, what the control player is saying is that a negate is better than a draw 2 on this board. So if you're willing to trade your negate for my draw 2, they'll just accept.
And the choice was discard Harness Lightning. He's already seen all 3 of Chris's Dragon Master outcasts. There's still potentially 2 Thing in the Ice in the deck, but he has a ton of counter spells anyway.
Right. Players here continue to trade land drops. And ends up Illumination from Reginbald.
Hey, you might consider, if you're drawing 2 cards and have to discard the hand size, what about cycling Hieroglyphic Illumination? There's enough cards, the way that the game shapes up, your hand is very excellent, where just hitting a land drop and discarding, the Harness Lightning like he did before, that's just fine.
Well, at that point, and he's even discard an island. Illumination is not a draw 2. Instead of a draw 1, it's draw 2, discard 1, which is generally better than a draw 1.
Right.
So it's actually still better even if you have to discard the hand size, though much less so.
Right.
It does seem to think that Brendan's trying to dig toward a certain type of card here.
Yeah, you don't want to find yourself in a spot where you're actually discarding counter spells, because you only get so many of them.
Yeah. All right, now here we have, I think, this is going to force some action. Chris Andersen is trying for a second Dynavolt Tower. So now we get a counter fight. Brendan will go for a negate. 8 mana for Brendan right now, 7 for Chris. See just how much fighting is going to happen. And the answer is very little. Chris lets the negate on his Dynavolt Tower resolve.
We're still in the phase where Chris has to be very concerned about a Gearhulk from Brendan.
Right. I mean, and what is nice, though, with Chris is that card forces a trade to happen. Brendan certainly can't let that resolve. Though against an opponent who's discarding to hand size, I'm not sure in Chris's spot. It's interesting that he wants to trade cards. Because that lets Brendan trade down on hand size.
Well, how many cards does Chris have at hand? If he
it's close.
If he drew up to 8, then you just jam the Dynavolt Tower.
Yeah, you jam it, or that seems fair.
Yeah, like as long as the mana doesn't seem terribly problematic. Yeah, even after tapping 3, you should be reasonably able to fight a counter war after your opponent taps 6 for a Gearhulk.
Now, Reginbald picked up a Dragon Master Outcast that turn, but declined to cast it.
Well, there's a Dynavolt Tower on the battlefield. It's tough to convert that one into too much value. When it's in his hand, he can disguise it as a counter spell or a spell that matters. On the battlefield, he casts it and it dies in pretty short order. For that reason, when Chris did play his Dragon Master Outcast, they died very quickly. But it cost Brendan a card. And because Chris has these Dynavolt Towers, his Dragon Master Outcasts just matter more.
Players continue to trade lands. Right now, and man, there's just so many for both players. We see 13 on Chris Andersen's side.
There's over half of the lands in his deck.
You see actually 13 on Brendan, so even on mana. There is this Dynavolt Tower in play for Chris. He's got 10 energy. And the tower's not leaving. We mentioned before there's no way to remove it for Brendan's side. Now, to actually kill Brendan, take that tower,
takes some doing.
Takes 30. He has to get up to 35 energy at some point, over the course of the game. 7 activations.
And 10's only good for 2 activations, and he has to be mindful of the fact that Brendan has actually drawn and played all 4 of his Wandering Fumarole.
Yeah.
If you find yourself out of energy, then you can start taking a lot of damage.
Well, yeah, what I do like, though, is that it's keeping those Dragon Master outcasts in check right now. Glimmer of Genius from Reginbald. So what is he trying to do? You know, Brendan has basically copies of all the cards in his deck. He's got Blue Gearhulk in hand. He's got Dragon Master Outcast in hand.
It's kind of a game of chicken.
What?
The other player, you want the other player to go for a Torrential Gearhulk and win a counter war first. That's kind of ideal. As long as you're able to keep pace on land drops, you can still kind of build towards that game. And he still has a lot of time before the Dynavolt Tower actually pressures him, and he was able to counter the second Dynavolt Tower, which made it so Chris's pressure is still actually very anemic. And if he has 8 cards in hand, it's reasonable enough to cast the Outcast. Better than discarding it.
So Outcast is now cast is made by Brendan, and Chris will shoot it with his artifact. It's not clear immediately. I guess Brendan could try to fight over that. At some point, you have to use disallows to counter tower activations. Not what you really want to.
Disallow and Dynavolt Tower activation is about the saddest use of that card that I've ever heard.
And there's a lot. The game really has taken shape by that fact that Chris got to resolve a tower early on.
And I say this having disallowed multiple Fever Visions triggers.
Well, that's different because not only do you not... You need to get those cards out of your hand any which way.
Right.
It's like, sure, I'll disallow anything.
It's like discarding 2 cards.
Yeah, sounds great. When your opponent's trying to Howling Mine you, yeah. Censor picked up for Brendan. But I'm still trying to think, I get how Chris wins. If they play this game long enough, I could, eventually there's going to be enough energy that Chris can start shooting Brendan. But what does Brendan do? How does Brendan win here?
Well, Brendan has the problem that if he just aggressively goes for the Gearhulk and it gets countered, he's in a worse spot. It's not the same spot. It's actually a worse spot because now he doesn't have the Gearhulk to play to.
Right. So some of the ideas is you try to build this hand where you end step, draw up to 9, and you have like 8 counter spells worth of backup and enough mana to cast them all. It's this really, how good at this fight do I want to get situation.
The other thing is, once you start fighting those counter wars, you'll find yourself at the end of a turn where Chris has 6 energy. He has 12 energy. He has 14 energy.
It's just Harness Lightning answers it. Chris will pass. But at some point, Brendan has to start the fight. He continues to discard to hand size, and that's not doing him any favors.
I strongly agree that discarding a card every turn will not win the game. There's still the possibility, again, that Chris is not killing him, that maybe Chris shoves on a Gearhulk for some reason, and he still made a land drop. He had to discard the Censor. The Censor wasn't really a card. That was fine.
It's discarded or cycle it.
Until he starts giving up materials, if we see Brendan take a turn where he draws and discards disallow, I'm totally on your side.
All right.
For now, the patience makes a lot of sense.
Well, the issue is that he won't know that turn's coming until it's too late. He'll have to be like, I have 7 cards. None of these are things I want to discard. I'll have to do something on end step. Chris Andersen. All right, going to activate Wandering Fumarole. This is some aggression.
Yeah, and this could actually end up being Brendan's window.
Yeah, this is offering, I suppose, a trade of lands. And here will be the attack. If he wanted to try to get a Gearhulk down, if Brendan did, this would be the opportunity. Chris is -5 mana, so a counter war probably goes Brendan's direction.
Right, and he's also fighting with Chris's mana on Chris's turn.
Yeah, so whatever mana he spends to fight here, definitely agree.
I found in my experience that activating Fumarole until your opponent is dead is often a misuse of 5 mana in these matchups. We'll see exactly how it plays out. But this is a lot of sorcery speed mana.
If it results in 4 damage or in a trade of lands, I'm in with Chris. But yeah, Brendan's going to take the window. He'll make Torrential Gearhulk. It says, all right, well, Chris is down 5 mana, Brendan down 6. That's close enough. Here's going to be the 5/6, and now we're going to see a fight start. Essence Scatter by Chris Andersen. Trigger for Dynavolt Tower. And Brendan will likely, now they're going to let the energy trigger resolve. I guess in theory, he's supposed to hold all the energy triggers on the stack. Not that it really matters.
Right. Yeah, the tower can only activate once.
Right.
It
It's
can
already
do
5.
that. Yeah.
Again, tower mult. I guess could be a big harness lightning at some point. Negate on Essence Scatter. So fight is happening. And you're right, though. Brendan will get to refresh mana first, regardless of who wins the counter war. Now, if they trade down their hands, we've seen Brendan use more of his discard spell or of his draw spells, so you'd think Chris can refresh faster on hand size.
It is, unless, of course, his non-counter spells are harnessed lightnings.
Sure.
Which at least one of them is.
Negate on a negate. So currently Chris Andersen controls the stack. Will Brendan commit further? Sure. Dispel.
It looks like 2 harness lightnings in the mix.
Chris is down to just 5 lands, whereas Brendan has 7. And it's Chris's move. Negate on Dispel is his play. He leaves up 3 mana. That could be, I guess at most 3 more counter spells. They could all be Dispels. So now the move's on Brendan. He has 7 mana. He's going to spend 3. He'll go down to 4 mana up. But now Brendan controls the stack. There's a thing of beauty here. 6 counter spells on top of a Gear Hulk. And we're not done. And negate. Let's add a 7th counter spell on.
I don't think we're done.
You see Chris Andersen is, yeah, Essence Scatter, negate, negate, negate from Chris Andersen. From Brendan, he has Gear Hulk, negate, dispel, disallow.
He has disallow sensor. He can't cast both.
I like that Chris is still playing around the sensor, though. He's got the one land up.
Right.
It's, you know, it's always it's that horrible spot to be in when you have a stack this big, and if Chris were to lose this stack to a sensor, oh, that would just be, that'd be so rough.
Horrible.
Disallow from Brendan. The only counter Chris could have is a dispel.
And there's no reason for Brendan to play around dispel, because if he has it, that's unfortunate. But if he doesn't, like, you're just letting your Gear Hulk get countered. 8
counter spells cast, but Brendan Reginbald wins the stack. He wanted to make a move in on Chris here, and it does succeed. He gets his Gear Hulk into play, which means he can block the Fumarole and take one of Chris's lands. On top of that, he'll get to untap first.
Brendan's looking at Harness Lightning. I believe that there's Glimmer of Geniuses in his graveyard.
Okay, so that's interesting. Does this mean that Brendan's actually worried about decking, or he has nothing he really needs to draw if he's going to make that play?
It's possible he's concerned about decking. You know, Chris is very capable of killing this Gear Hulk before long. Yeah, but Brendan has 4 Wandering Fumaroles. Suppose the tower. Well,
Wait,
the tower can't kill
how many of the Fumaroles can he activate?
It's at least 3.
I mean, let's hold on here, right? Like, I guess Dynamo Tower can kill one of them. Can Brendan swing back for 20? There's no way. There's no way he can do 20, right? I say that not knowing the answer.
Well, if it's 3 flipped Fumaroles, that's 17. It can never be 4 flipped because the Dynamo Tower would kill one of them.
So it's only all right. So the answer's no, but it can get pretty. He can get pretty close. Here's 1 Fumarole, it looks like.
And this really looks like Chris forced action that in a fight that he lost.
Yeah, I mean, what was that? Right, he was trying to get 4 free damage. Because of the Dynamo Tower, it felt like Chris Andersen had control of this game, but he just got impatient. Here is Torrential Gear Hulk, 5 damage. Chris Andersen down to 15. We do need to, at this point, though, remember they know each other's deck lists. There gets to become this game where they start counting each other's graveyard. Like, how many counterspells are actually left in Brendan's deck. Chris certainly has some ways to kill the Gear Hulk. He's got multiple Harness Lightnings.
Yeah, he'll be able to get that off the table.
Both players, though, have reset their mana. But now, whereas before, Chris took action when it was really Brendan's turn to do so.
I do have to say Brendan flashing back Harness Lightning instead of Glimmer of Genius also struck me as a mistake.
Yeah, it really depends on what's in his deck and yard, right? Like, we get to these weird situations when you get laid enough in a control mirror where that sort of thing becomes right.
I don't think we're there.
We'll look through the graveyard. Here is Harness Lightning from Chris Andersen on Torrential Gear Hulk. He has 16 energy in reserve. That's without the Dynavolt trigger and without the Harness Lightning resolving.
Yeah, more than enough to take care of a 6 toughness creature.
Right. Cycling of Sensor from Brendan. He'll do it again. And Brendan's hand is actually just land Gearhulk. If that's the case, Chris actually has control of the game once again.
Yeah, 2 islands off the top. He does still
Yeah.
have his second Torrential Gearhulk in his hand, but
Chris has that covered.
stuff left over.
Chris has his own Gearhulk, his own Disallow, his own Essence Scatter. That Gearhulk's not resolving. Chris could actually resolve his own Gearhulk into this board. So he's spending 6 energy there. So he had 14. Went up to 8. Yeah, he went up there and then down to 13. So up to 18 down to... Up to 19 down to 13. Yep, that's right. And Chris will just draw. Not going to go for the Gearhulk just yet.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to find yourself in a spot where you cast the Gearhulk and lose it when you don't have to, especially when you're the player with the active Dynavolt tower.
More lands from Reginbald. He has now picked up a negate, so Brendan is starting to refuel. Had Chris Andersen gone for the Gearhulk last turn, he would have won the counter war. I don't think he actually wins it now.
Yeah, well, we'll find out pretty
I guess
quick.
so. Yeah, well, depending on what's in their hands. Here's on Brendan's end step, Chris Andersen will go for Torrential Gearhulk. So Gearhulk, Disallow, Essence Scatter in Reginbald's hand. So Brendan casts Scatter on the Gearhulk. Now we get another stack. It's going to be Disallow on Chris Andersen. And now the negate that Reginbald just picked up is looking mighty nice. Negate on the Disallow. Chris Andersen cannot continue to fight. He just has Essence Scatter, Harness Lightning, so the counter war will happen. I think Chris missing 2 energy on a... He missed 1 Dynavolt trigger there. It's understandable. There's a lot happening.
And a nice pickup for Chris. Glimmer of Genius off the top. And I believe Brendan just has a Torrential Gearhulk in hand, and Chris has that cover with Essence Scatter, even though he couldn't fight the other counter war.
Yeah, they both say go. Chris goes for Glimmer of Genius once the mana's reset. This will get him 2 energy off Tower, 2 energy off Glimmer. It's a really a strong card to hit here. And Chris has more of the draw 2 4-mana spells than Brendan left in his deck. Brendan's been playing far more of them.
Yeah, and Chris sees 2 lands that he gets to put to the bottom here.
And then he draws land and another Dynavolt tower. Another tower, if he can get one to stick, is very strong here for Chris Andersen.
Yeah, he'll need to find some spells off the top of his deck. You know, when you're light on cards, the second tower or something. He can certainly activate 2 in a turn. He has more than enough energy. That's fine. And Hieroglyphic Illumination off the top, that makes the second tower look a lot nicer. And you see Chris here, he goes for the second Dynavolt tower.
All right, the second tower is a huge amount of energy if this works. So Brendan probably has to fight over this, even though it really looks like a losing fight. He's got just a Gearhulk.
Yeah, Ether Hub, the other card in hand, and Chris still has that Essence Scatter.
Yeah, I mean, or worse, right? You have to think Chris, an Essence Scatter, or a Gearhulk, or a Disallow. Brendan has 1 card, and he kind of knows it's a loser. At the same time, I think he knows that if there's 2 Dynavolts on the board, he's going to lose 2.
Brendan knows that Chris has twice as many cards in hand than he does, and he knows that half of his hand is blank.
So here's Torrential Gearhulk, and yes, Chris Andersen does have the counter spell. It's Essence Scatter. And he'll get 2 energy off the tower. And, you know, the fact that Andersen continues to have, like, more material than Brendan, I think when we go back to some of these turns where how Brendan continued to pace his draw spells and have to discard off them, it took just, like, the quantity of counter spells out of his deck. At some point when all the cards trade, you have to think, you know, I only have so many negates. If some of my negates are trading with the discard step or something like that, that's no good.
Well, he discarded a Censor, which really didn't cost
Yeah,
him anything.
that was
I think
fine.
it's the Gearhulk for not Glimmer. That's where I
Yeah.
keep getting hung up on.
I do. That's big. That's big. Yeah, there were a couple Censor discards. There was a
Harness
Lightning?
That's nothing. He discarded a land. That's also kind of whatever.
yeah, there's never been a creature that Chris presented I guess Brendan, no, at one point Brendan did trade an Essence Scatter with a Dragon Master Outcast. That was a win for Chris.
Sure.
Those are, in a counter war, those need to be saved for Gear Hulks. Because lightninging a Gear Hulk, that stinks.
That's a little harder.
Yeah, and Chris is going to pull away 2 towers in play, cast Hieroglyphic Illumination. Now, and you see all those 6s on the Jacob Law token. This is all energy that Chris has.
Mm-hmm. He still has to be a little bit concerned about Wandering Fumarole, but he has more than enough energy to get a little bit aggressive.
So Chris down to 15 energy. He shoots Brendan twice. So I'm going to do a quality of life thing. If you're doing this at home and you're playing with 6-sided dice, here's what you should do. Don't stack 6s, just stack 5s. Just make everyone happy. And instead of having just do 5-5-5.
Yeah.
And especially when you have Dynavolt towers, it's gonna. Everyone will thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna be a little bit annoyed when you're counting by 2s and you stop at 5.
It's fine. Just get another die. Don't take it to 6. Just stop at 5.
You start paying, you'll feel pretty all right about it.
Here is the Wandering Fumarole. Chris is gonna try to get if he can get a hit with Fumarole in, it's less activations of Dynavolt tower. Reginbald will try for a block here with his own Wandering Fumarole. Chris has a Harness Lightning, but okay.
Yeah.
They block. See if either player will flip. Looks like Chris is going to let damage happen, use his Dynavolt tower to finish off the creature land. Sounds good. They were both 1/4s. Neither player flipped.
And Chris can actually use a Harness Lightning to target his own Fumarole, do 0 damage, and just make 5 energy.
Let's not get greedy yet.
It turns it into a Lightning Bolt. I'm just saying it's possible.
There will be time for that later.
Let's
make our opponent force us to do that.
That's not a play that I'm outright recommending. I'm just saying.
This is where I'm getting into the blue art deck. It's like, you can make this good play. And I was like, I could just do nothing. I like the nothing.
Yeah, you're coming around.
I want to play this deck. This is, everyone's like, oh, you could do this. I was just, I'll just draw
I could pass turn.
I could. Play that removal spell. Yeah, play something that makes me.
Right. The best card in the mirror is Counterspell. What do you counterspell? They're counterspells.
Does Chris have enough energy to burn him out with Dynavolt towers? Probably. Is he going to use it on those creature lands instead? Yeah. Why? It's safer.
It's about sending a message.
I'm like, well, I just want to make sure I want to really get all your cards, so we're just gonna, got all these Gear Hulks, but I don't really need to cast one right now, right? Like, that seems awfully aggressive.
Yeah. I'm really more of a passive player.
I used to say, what is it? The trick to playing some of these decks was, get a chair you really enjoy. People, they were like, why are you still playing? And be like, I'm having fun. I like this chair. I like this chair. I like this deck. I like this game. Why would I want to do something else?
Forgive me for enjoying playing Magic.
Yeah. So, end step, Gear Hulk from Chris Andersen. Reginbald's going to try to fight here. It's one of his last fights. It's his own Gear Hulk. He has picked up some negates, at least one negate in the meantime. So is he disallow on Brendan's Gear Hulk? None of these Gear Hulks, by the way, are all on the stack. We don't know what they're targeting yet. Mm-hmm. Negate from Brendan. And Dispel from Chris.
And it looks like Brendan's last cards are Sensor, Ether Hub.
Chris has got more than enough land. Sensor's not going to do it. He's going to cycle the Sensor, though. Does he find something there? It's a one. Yeah, nope, Spirebluff Canal. So Andersen wins the war, gets a Gear Hulk for his victory in the counter war. That'll cast a Glimmer. I like when Glimmer makes 6 energy.
And it looks like Brendan only has mana for 1 Fumarole to block on the following turn. Chris can fire up some of his own attack. He has the 2 active towers plus the Gear Hulk.
Top draw. It's another Gear Hulk and another Glimmer. Tap some Dynavolt towers. Deal 6 damage. Put Brendan to 8. And it looks like Chris Andersen might just lead his team into the finals.
The trick here is to proceed through one turn cycle without getting 3 GRVs. This is the big test. This is the big test.
No warnings. Another land, sweet. Those are great. Always play those. That's the easy decision. You just keep playing those.
Oh yeah.
Never, you know. Wandering Fumarole, swing with Fumarole and Gear Hulk.
Attacks with exactly enough Fumaroles.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need.
He might only have the one.
You don't
actually.
need to swing with more. I know he doesn't have them, but like, something could happen. He could just swing with no Fumaroles. That would be my line. It's like I like my mana. Like he could. It's probably lethal. Yeah, probably is. You're right.
I only need one more energy that I can just activate Tower 3 times.
Yeah, it's like it is probably lethal. This is gonna work too. And that's gonna be game and match. Chris Andersen 2-0. He wins the deciding match and sends his team to the finals. It is going to be Spencer, Garnier, Clay Spicklemire, and Chris Andersen. An impressive control match there by Chris Andersen, winning the mirror in 2. And you have to remember, despite that game, really drawing it out, Chris winning at the end, go back.